I never expected my peaceful life to turn into a battleground over real estate, but here we were. My two older sisters, Claire and Vanessa, sat across from me at my kitchen table, their eyes sharp with expectation. "You don't even need both properties?" Claire began, flipping her manicured hand dismissively. "You should let us rent out your flat and house. We could all use the extra money." Vanessa, the more calculating of the two, leaned in. "You're barely ever at the house. And the flat? You hardly use it. Just think about how much we could make if we listed them online." I took a deep breath. Why would I do that? Those are my places. And I have plans for them. What plans? You live like a hermit. You barely entertain guests. You're being selfish. This wasn't about financial help. Both of them had good jobs. This was about control. They had always found ways to dictate what I should do, and I was tired of it. Before I could respond, the doorbell rang. I frowned. I wasn't expecting anyone. I pushed back my chair and opened the door to find a disheveled man standing there, clutching an envelope. His suit was wrinkled. His tie loosened like he'd had a rough night. "Are you the owner of the house and flat on Oak Ridge Drive?" he asked, his voice slightly frantic. I hesitated. "Yes, why?" He shoved the envelope into my hands. "You might want to read that." Urgently. I barely had time to register my sisters hovering behind me before the man turned on his heel and rushed away, nearly tripping over his own feet. I closed the door, my fingers tightening around the envelope. My sisters watched me like vultures, their earlier argument momentarily forgotten. "Aren't you going to open it?" Vanessa asked. I ignored her and tore it open. The letter inside was handwritten in shaky, rushed script. "You don't know me, but your properties are in danger. Someone is trying to take them from you. Do not trust anyone, not even your family. I'll explain everything soon. Meet me at the old train station tonight at midnight. It's urgent. Don't tell anyone." A cold shiver ran down my spine. My sisters leaned in, trying to peek over my shoulder. I quickly folded the letter and stuffed it in my pocket. "What was that about?" Claire demanded. "Nothing," I said too quickly. "Just a mistake, I think." Vanessa narrowed her eyes. "You looked pale for a mistake. Who was that guy?" I forced a shrug. "No idea." Their eyes stayed locked on me, but I wasn't about to share anything. If this letter was real, then something bigger was going on. And if it was a scam, I'd deal with it myself. "Anyway," I said, trying to shift the conversation, "I'm not renting out my places. End of discussion." Claire let out an exaggerated sigh, but Vanessa only gave me a knowing look. "Fine," she said smoothly. "But don't come crying to us when you regret it." That night, as the clock neared midnight, I slipped on my jacket and stepped out into the cold. I had no idea what I was walking into, but deep down I knew this was just the beginning. I arrived at the old train station just before midnight. The place had been abandoned for years, its cracked concrete platforms and rusting benches swallowed by shadows. A single flickering street lamp cast eerie light over the scene. I pulled my coat tighter and scanned the empty space. No sign of the man from earlier. Maybe this was a setup. Maybe I was an idiot for coming here alone. Just as I was about to turn back, I heard hurried footsteps behind me. I spun around. The disheveled man from earlier stumbled out of the darkness, panting. He looked even worse now. Sweat glistened on his forehead, and his hands trembled as he clutched a file folder. "Good. You came," he wheezed. "Who are you? And what's this about my properties?" He swallowed hard and shoved the folder into my hands. "Your name is on these, but someone else is trying to claim them. They've been working behind the scenes for months." I frowned and opened the folder. Inside were copies of documents, property deeds, forged signatures, legal filings. "Wait, what? Someone's trying to steal my home." The man nodded rapidly. "Not just someone. Your sisters." A chill shot through me. "That's impossible." "Is it?" He gave me a knowing look. "Look at the dates. The applications were filed under your name, but I guarantee you didn't sign these." I flipped through the pages. Sure enough, the signatures were almost mine, but not quite. The handwriting was just a little too neat, a little too deliberate. Vanessa had always been good at imitating handwriting. I clenched my jaw. Why would they do this? Greed. Or maybe something bigger. The man muttered, glancing over his shoulder. I shouldn't even be here. They don't know I took these documents. Who are you? I asked again, my patience wearing thin. The man opened his mouth, then froze. His eyes widened in terror. I followed his gaze just in time to see the flash of headlights speeding toward us. A black SUV roared into the station, its tires screeching against the pavement. Run! The man shouted. He grabbed my arm and pulled me into the darkness as the SUV doors flew open and figures in dark clothing poured out, chasing us. I didn't know who they were. I didn't know why my sisters were trying to take my properties. But I knew one thing for certain. This was way bigger than just money. My feet pounded against the cracked pavement as I sprinted after the man. The figures behind us were fast. Too fast. Whoever they were, they weren't just some hired goons. We ducked around the crumbling remains of an old ticket booth. But the man, whoever he was, wasn't as lucky as I was. A gunshot rang out, and he let out a sharp cry, collapsing against the side of the booth. I skidded to a stop, my heart slamming against my ribs. Go! He gasped, clutching his bleeding shoulder. Take the folder and go. They can't. His words were cut off as one of the figures lunged at me. Instinct kicked in. I dodged, barely avoiding the attacker's grip, and took off in the opposite direction. I didn't look back. I didn't have time to think. The train yard stretched out before me like a maze of steel and shadows. I leaped over abandoned tracks, my breath ragged. Behind me, more footsteps closed in. I spotted an old maintenance shed ahead, its rusted door slightly ajar. Without hesitation, I threw myself inside, slamming the door shut and pressing my back against it. I forced myself to breathe quietly, my pulse roaring in my ears. Then voices. Where did he go? Check the yard. He couldn't have gotten far. Footsteps scattered in different directions. I waited, counting the seconds, then minutes. Only when I was sure they were gone did I pull out the folder again, my hands shaking. My sisters were behind this. But why? Was it really just about money? Something told me there was more to it, and I needed answers. I stayed in the shed for nearly an hour, waiting until the footsteps and voices completely faded. My mind raced. If my sisters were behind this, what else were they capable of? Carefully, I cracked the door open. The train yard was empty. I took one last look at the bloodstain where the man had fallen. He was gone. No body, no trace of him. Had they taken him? Killed him? I had no idea. I clutched the folder to my chest and slipped into the night. Back at my flat, I locked the door and triple-checked the windows. Then I spread the documents out on my kitchen table. There were fake property transfer papers, bank statements, none of which I recognized. But the strangest thing was a birth certificate. It was mine, but the birth date was different. And the parents listed? They weren't the ones who raised me. I sat back, my breath catching in my throat. Was this a mistake? A forgery? Or was my whole life a lie? Just then, my phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. We need to talk. Meet me at the Rivertown Cemetery. Alone. I stared at the screen. This was getting worse by the second. But if I wanted answers, I had no choice. I grabbed my coat and stepped into the night, unaware that someone was already watching me from the shadows. The Rivertown Cemetery was deserted when I arrived. A thick fog clung to the ground, curling around the tombstones like ghostly fingers. My instincts screamed at me to turn back, but I forced myself forward. A lone figure stood near an old, crumbling mausoleum. As I approached, the person stepped into the dim glow of a street lamp. It was the man from the train station. "You're alive," I whispered. "Not for long if we don't move fast," he muttered, clutching his bandaged shoulder. I barely got away. I swallowed hard. What the hell is going on? What's this birth certificate? Who are these people after me? He exhaled and motioned for me to follow. "There's something you don't know about your past." We stopped in front of a large, weathered gravestone. He pointed at the name carved into the stone. It was my name. That's impossible. No, he said. The truth is, you weren't supposed to exist. The person in that grave, he was the real heir to your family's estate. He died as a child, but someone covered it up. They changed records. They gave his identity to you. My head spun. So, who am I? That's what your sisters don't want you to find out, he said grimly. Because if you do, they lose everything. Before I could respond, a sharp click echoed through the air. We turned to see Vanessa standing a few feet away, a gun in her hand. Her expression was calm, almost bored. You should have just given up the properties, she said. Now you won't have anything at all. Then she pulled the trigger. The gunshot cracked through the cold night air. I barely had time to react before the man lunged at me, shoving me to the ground. Pain exploded in my shoulder as I hit the dirt, but I was alive. He had saved me. Vanessa cursed under her breath and took a step closer, adjusting her aim. You should have stayed ignorant, she said. Now, you're just a problem that needs fixing. My heart pounded. Why? Why go this far? It was never just about the properties, was it? She gave me a cold smile. No. It was about making sure you never found out the truth. That I'm not really who I think I am? I demanded. Vanessa tilted her head. Oh, you're real enough. You just weren't meant to inherit. Claire and I were. But then you happened and our parents, our real parents, decided to pretend you were him. The dead boy, the heir. I struggled to process her words. So, I was just a replacement. She sighed. A very convincing one. But it was always supposed to be our inheritance. And you? You were just a tool. Until you started asking too many questions. Behind me, the man groaned. He was alive, but barely. I had to do something. Vanessa took another step forward, steadying her aim. You should have let us have the properties, she said. Now, I have to clean this up myself. My mind raced. I had seconds to act. Then, suddenly, headlights flooded the cemetery. A car screeched to a stop on the gravel path. Claire stepped out, her face pale, her phone still in her hand. Vanessa, stop! She shouted. The police are coming. Vanessa spun toward her, furious. You called them? Claire's voice wavered. We were never supposed to kill him. This wasn't the plan. For the first time, doubt flickered across Vanessa's face. I saw my chance. I grabbed a loose rock from the ground and hurled it at her hand. The gun clattered to the ground, and I lunged for it just as sirens pierced the night air. Vanessa's eyes filled with rage, but it was over. Within seconds, police cars astop, officers rushing toward us, guns drawn. She lifted her hands slowly, glaring at me with pure hatred. You ruined everything, she hissed. I tightened my grip on the gun, my breath unsteady. No, I said. I just found out the truth. The officers took her, and Claire, into custody. And just like that, the nightmare was over. Or so I thought, because the biggest mystery still remained. If I wasn't really who I thought I was, then who was I? The police took Vanessa and Claire away, but I barely registered their arrests. My mind was spinning. If I wasn't really me, then who was I? The man who had helped me, who had nearly died for me, groaned as an officer helped him up. His face was pale, but he managed to look at me. You need to finish this, he muttered. Finish what? I asked. His eyes flickered toward the folder I still held in my hands. Find out who you really are. 2 weeks later, I sat in a lawyer's office, staring at the results of a DNA test. The truth was colder than I ever imagined. I wasn't related to Vanessa and Claire at all. I wasn't even part of their family. The records had been falsified decades ago, but the real story was this. I had been taken from my birth parents as a child and given a new identity, that of the real heir, the boy who had died young. My parents had covered it up, raising me as their own to avoid scandal. Vanessa and Claire had discovered the truth years ago, but instead of exposing it, they had waited. Waited until they could erase me completely and reclaim the wealth for themselves. But they had failed, and now I was left with a life that didn't belong to me. A month later, I stood outside my childhood home. No, their home, one last time. I wasn't sure where I would go next. I wasn't even sure who I was. But one thing was certain. I wasn't going to live a lie anymore. As I walked away, leaving the house and the past behind me, I felt something I hadn't in a long time. Freedom. And maybe, just maybe, that was worth more than any inheritance.